So B Corp, what's it all about? So today I'll share a little bit about the what, the why, and the how of the sort of an overview of B Corp. And I suppose just to highlight that this is actually B Corp Month, March, every year. And the theme this year is moving forward, so moving businesses forward on their journey to sustainability and so forth. And those of you around the London area, I'm sure some shops you've maybe noticed B Corp themed aisles and end of aisles and so forth and so on. It's the key time whenever they highlight brands and stuff that are involved and give them a little bit of a boost. So a little bit about myself. Those of you who haven't spoke to me or had a chat to me before, I have a bit of an eclectic background in life and in work. The staircase image is to highlight the fact that I actually left school straight after GCSE, literally the next week, started work in a joinery shop and served my time as a carpenter and joiner. I'd love to say that I actually managed to build a staircase like that, but unfortunately not. It was a fairly small scale home county's house builder, and it was fairly conventional, straight up and down staircases. But anyhow, give me the opportunity then to continue on with my studies. Went on then and done a building studies, a HNC, sorry, in building studies, and then went on to a degree in construction engineering and management, and evolved through the company through different departments, and eventually ended up in the accounting department, and then went back and become a chartered management accountant. That's more startling when you actually know that when I left with my GCSEs, I actually had an E in mathematics. So it just shows you how you can turn things around, and sometimes just timing when it comes to education as well. And I think the fact I had the apprenticeship maybe took my eye off the ball when it comes to exams. Wasn't really concentrating or revising for them. And then I've evolved through that space, through management accounting, and I've now got more involved in sustainability and the B Corp certification kind of process and helping companies on that. And the beekeeping image is because in the last year, I've also taken up beekeeping as well. So it's a thing that I'm a bit passionate about. So there's a little bit of a play there on the whole bees and beekeeping thing. And I often say I'm a bee flight instructor. Of course, bees don't need any flight instruction, but I relate it to more instructing how people can use B Corp as a means to fly with business and stuff. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. So I drive into the reasoning behind, often people come to this, and it's this historic global culture shift that we all are witnessing, and has come about a lot of it in the last 4 years since the pandemic. And it's really underway to sort of look to harness business to help society face its greatest challenges and to build a much more inclusive economy for all. Over those 4 years, there's been lots of things that have come along that have sort of shook us up a little bit. I suppose the biggest one of all was the global pandemic. And that's also brought about some other changes as well. So post that, we've obviously had the Ukraine war and the energy crisis, which has had an impact on people and their lives. That cost impact has been massive, more so for some more than others. And some are obviously left in a inevitable choice of either to heat or eat. We've also seen other things brought to our attention as well. David Attenborough's witness statement film, if any of you have watched that, is quite startling in terms of the planet and how it stands at the moment, and that we've only 35% left of the wilderness on the planet, and then we've lost half of the world's shallow water coral as well. Other startling statistic, which I suppose relates to ourselves in the UK, is that we cut down 15 billion trees a year globally, and one of the top causes is beef production in Brazil, and they actually devote 7 times the land area of the UK to beef production, and much of that was former rainforests. Back to the B Corp and the bee thing as well, is the massive decline in insect numbers, and many of them we are really, really heavily reliant upon for pollination of crops. One of the most startling statistics I learned through learn about bees was that there's 2 million beehives are moved every year in the US down to pollinate 1 million acres of almonds in California. Sadly, a lot of them die in the transit there and back. So even in our attempts to try and correct the deficit we're now facing with pollinators, we're actually creating a little bit more of a problem there as well. So yeah, they're just highlight a few things that certainly are slight cause for concern. I think the other thing that I suppose we're all starting to recognise as well is there is this shift in mindset as well, away from that kind of very much 20th century sort of shareholder maximization value piece that was very exclusive to the shareholders. It was very much based on short-term performance targets and very extractive in its nature of just constantly bringing out more and more things rather than being more regenerative. And with shifting, I hope, across to a more 21st century view of things to sort of include more stakeholders in our consideration of things, And that's been driven by a number of factors we'll get onto a bit later. Much more inclusive because of that. It's a bit more focused on the longer term. Some guys going back to what was maybe pure capitalism thinking, I suppose, a little bit, and also more regenerative as well in terms of circular economy and recycling and reuse of materials that we already have. So all of this has made me reflect and think about what it is I could do and what sort of contribution I could make to helping along this. So that's what drew me to the B Corp certification and what it could offer to business and on this sort of journey. So the B Corp origin is actually a startup story. I was just sharing that with Ollie before the call, and it goes way back to 1993, where these fine 3 American graduates decided to pitch a database idea, but unfortunately it flopped and they didn't get the funding. And on their way home, sitting in a pizza joint, they decided, what are we going to do? And they come up with that amazing word that we're all familiar with from 2020, which was they pivoted. And they pivoted to form a company called And One, which was they sold street basketball t-shirts, shorts and shoes. They grew very, very fast. And in 2021, with 250 million in revenue, they were second only to Nike. But all the time, they were building a very socially responsible company. They'd done things very, very differently compared to the American norm at that time. They were offering great parental leave to staff, shared ownership with them, had best-in-class supplier codes with their overseas workers, made sure they were paid and treated correctly, annually given 5% of profits away to charities. But after much pressure, and unfortunately having to downsize and lay off, they eventually got the company back around again and sold it in 2005. Within only a few months of this sale, all those pre-existing commitments were all stripped away, and this left them, very despondent and just gutted to think that all those great things and all those great culture they built up had all been stripped away in the business. So then that made them think, well, how can we potentially give future founders the opportunity to not have this happen to them? So that's what put them on the journey to thinking about this benefit corporation principles, and that's when they generated the VIA impact assessment, which again I'll touch on later on, as a means to get externally verified that you have all these great things in place. But the most important piece, the most important piece for a lot of founders, is the fact that you make a legal change. You change your constitution or your memorandums and articles, and you then embed the fact that you think differently going forward. You're now conscious of the wider stakeholder grouping, which obviously people, planet is often talked about into your decision making going forward. So that led them on then to this certified B Corporation. And I think that the key standout for a lot of people is the fact this is externally verified, and it is a proof point then that the company is meeting the highest standards of social and environmental impact. And again, it's that profit be important, but it's to get that balance correct then with people and planet as well, so that it's the benefit of all within the planet and the wider community. So it's grown massively. I've started to realize that actually it grew 25% in the last year alone. It now stands at, it's probably over this number, to be honest, because it changes day by day. 8,395 companies globally, employing about 770,000 workers, 162 industries, 96 countries, but all coming back around to that one unifying goal, and that is the principle to use business as a force for good. So some of the other reasons why people decide to join and to certify. So that protect the mission one is that legal change, lock that in, and hopefully then through future rounds or when the company is eventually sold, that is still embedded in there. And it's actually an attractor for some in the case of like innocent smoothies, Coca-Cola. That was one of the attractors why they come in to buy them. And Unilever has certainly brought up some B Corp brands over the years, and part of the reason is because they're on that journey to sustainability. They're just doing things differently. Amplify the voice. It's an opportunity to go and join with others in the community and to stand out and to stand by that mission to be business as a force for good. Improve the impact. Sometimes it's getting sort of insight and knowledge to make positive social and environmental impacts, and then also tracking the performance over time, which is really, really important, and to share that story and to have customers see that you are making steady progress in this. The next one, attracting talent, is become massive. I mean, we were at an event yesterday down in Dublin, and some of the statistics shared around the number of applicants now coming forward to B Corp who have only recently certified, who would have struggled to attract talent. Now they're getting 200-300 people applying for one role, and they're actually getting piles of CVs building up saying, look, if you have jobs coming up, we want the heads up here because we'd really like to work for a B Corp. Building the relationships I've touched upon, in terms of that community piece, and that's hard to knock back. I mean, that event had 200 B Corps or people associated with B Corp there. And it's just great to be in that room, although it does, I suppose someone highlighted, tend to be a bit of an echo chamber. And the important thing is to get out like this and to talk to others and to enlighten them. It's okay, people that get it and want to know about it, but it's important also to make sure everybody understands and knows what it's about. And yeah, overall, it's leading that movement. It's been there helping to set the gold standard for good business and inspire the race to the top. When often, sometimes in industries, it's all about the bottom. So it's getting and moving that needle on. So as I say, it's much more than the certification. I think until people scratch the surface and go along some of these events, they don't realize how much support and how much cooperation goes on within B Corp community. Collaboration is a massive thing in B Corp. I'm sure you've maybe seen over time some collaborations like Tony Chocolonely and Ben and Jerry Ice Cream have collaborated on certain things over time. And then certainly across in the UK, B locals are a massive thing. Most areas now have B locals, and people are able to go along and join them either when they're certified or on the journey to certification. The Better Business Act might have passed your notice at some point. That's an endeavour which B Lab UK is part of, to try and actually to have a change to the Companies Act, so that whenever a company forms, they're able to form with this benefit corporation mindset right from the very get-go of business. So B Corp eligibility is important for some, and it's often the thing that causes a bit of confusion. So to be eligible for B Corp certification, it's for most for-profit businesses, sorry, it's a mouthful, which have been in operation for at least a year. Certain companies with related entities or larger multinationals or public companies will have additional requirements and an additional scoping to go through just to see how the certification looks. Sole traders is often a confusing one, because people say, oh, even a sole trader can be B Corp certified. A sole trader within a limited company can become a B Corp, and that often causes a bit of confusion. Partnerships, mutuals, cooperatives, again, depending on legally how they're set up, are certainly welcome, and there is some already in the B Corp movement. Pending B Corp is, again, another confusing term that's often bandied around. People say, oh, we've put in our application for B Corp, we're a pending B Corp. Actually, the pending B Corp status is for startups in their first year of operation, when they don't have the data to back up all their good impacts. But yeah, making that point that a sole trader in the truest sense is not eligible for any kind of B Corp certification. Charities and non-profits are not, and also CICs, other sort of non-profit entities, aren't equally eligible going forward as well. And the reason for that is B Corp wants to set itself out as this is for-profit businesses to help them with sustainability, because there's lots of obviously NGOs and non-profits doing amazing things in this space already. So what is it, or what does it contain, and what does the assessment look like? For those that have never signed up or had a look at the benefit impact assessment, it basically breaks down the ESG into a lot more of its kind of constituent parts. And the first and foremost one is governance, which often, when ESG is thought about, or sustainability is thought about, everyone concentrates on the environmental and social side of things. The governance is often overlooked, but actually the governance is what glues it all together. It's the most important piece in this, because it's the one where it brings in that stakeholder thinking and engagement, and bringing that into the way that the business looks at strategy and then controls and measures performance going forward. Workers, that's what it says on the tin. It's really about worker impact, the positive areas there in terms of how you pay or support or give benefits to your workers, but also training and also social mobility, how you maybe give opportunities within the workforce to move on up through. And I'm a case in point of had amazing opportunities in my life to move up in my position in life. Community is that engagement beyond the boundaries of, and that's that kind of wider sort of double materiality piece of looking outside of the business, and often is very insightful for a lot of businesses, and certainly startups. A lot of people are already doing that because they're doing sort of surveys and they're talking to potential future customers or communities in terms of supply chain and so forth. Environment, again, a bit like workers, sort of does what it says on the tin. It's around about that sort of like energy usage impact in terms of waste, water usage, but also picks up some of the more sort of uniquely impactful things that some, particularly in the startup space, are doing in terms of changing things in the environment, in terms of having positive impact, and you will get rewarded. What's called the impact business model points will be awarded for those things. Customers is always a small section, and often causes a lot of surprise when people go, oh, it's only worth a fraction of what the others are when you're doing this. But it's really around the kind of protecting consumers around warranties and feedback for complaints and so forth, the GDPR, that type of headline stuff. Again, workers, if you have a really positive impact for your customers, again, this gets drilled into a little bit. And then the last, and maybe some guys, one of the most important things, is the disclosure questionnaire, which asks all the sort of searching questions about whether you really are worthy or should be in the B Corp community. And this is the one which would exclude companies that are maybe involved in directly into fossil fuels, directly maybe in the tobacco or arms trade and so forth, and so on. If you're sort of just help and support them, that's a bit more of a complicated question. If that's only a fraction of what you do, there's some questions around that as well that get drilled into. So that's the kind of risk assessment piece of the whole process you go through to B Corp. So just drilling a little bit more into those headline titles and what falls under those. So under governance, it's around that mission engagement piece about what does your mission statement say about what you do, what positive impacts you're having. Ethics and transparency is very important. Having code of ethics, whistleblowing policy, that type of stuff. How much you share, either internally or externally, about your positive impacts on people and planet. Workers, as I say, obvious the sort of things you might expect in there in terms of financial stability. Health and wellness can apply, and if there's additional benefits there. Career development, I want to say that career advancement. And then the most important bit in workers is that engagement and satisfaction. You know, is it just the case you think this is what your workers want and are happy about, or can they give you more input into how you operate as a business? Community side, it's that diversity and inclusion on a workforce and a supply chain basis. Economic impact is again a massive one, and I mean we can all see some businesses that are clearly set up to buy local and supply local and so forth, which is great and it's benefit to all. Civic engagement is around maybe volunteering opportunities for your workers, charitable giving, things like that. Supply chain management then again is about looking at what can we do in our supply chain to help and support those that maybe are underrepresented typically in our industry or in our supply chain. Environment, again, some of the typical things you'd expect around environmental management, tracking your air and climate impacts, water usage, and then land and life and that ecological impact that maybe some companies might be having. And then customers, as I say, is typically around just customer stewardship, really. So we actually are a certified B Corp ourselves. We weren't just satisfied to be trained as B leaders to help people on the journey. We actually went through the process ourselves, and we were the first actually in Northern Ireland to gain the certification, and our recertification is coming up later this year. And there's always this intention to try and increase the score. And often people, when they hear that, the base score you must get is 80 and people are scraping 81, 82, and they're going, oh, I thought they'd done better than that. When you go through the process, you realize how difficult and how hard and arduous it can be sometimes just even to get beyond the 80 point. And it's also a slightly clever strategy in that there is this like potential 200 that, people are always striving to improve. So you'll always find when people recertify, they're always delighted to go, we certified last time at 85 or 90. We're delighted to say we're now 103 or 110 or whatever, because it starts to thinking, well, where can we have more positive impact in all of those 5 pillars? And you start introducing these impact business models into the business, and that's where these extra points start to come through as you go through this certification journey. Sorry, I'm not keeping a check on chat. Is there any questions that have popped up just before? Nope. All good.
We're good at the moment.
Yep.
Prem.
Perfect. Okay, I'll just quickly play this video. Hopefully it will work. Tell me if you can hear the voice. Everyone can hear the sound of that?
History, humankind has created a multitude of different economic and social systems. Traditional systems, absolutism, feudalism, communism, capitalism, the list goes on. And while systems are complex, the truth is they were built by people, so they can be changed by people. After all, humanity is interdependent with one another and with the planet. The problem is, this is often forgotten, and short-term gains are prioritized over long-term value. Me over we, now over the future, inequity over justice, profits over people and planet. Leading to this and this. All of which are negative impacts of our current economic system. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can transform from profiting only the few to benefiting all, from concentrating wealth and power to ensuring equity, from extraction to regeneration, and from individualism to interdependence. It is not an unreachable ideal. It is the reality that we, the B Corp movement, are already building. All around the world, we enable companies to improve their social and environmental impact with our standards and tools. We certify and engage businesses that meet these standards. We catalyse public policies that expand businesses' accountability beyond just to shareholders. We steward communities and collective action and amplify the stories of people using business as a force for good. The B Corp movement, led by B Lab and Sistema Bay, positively impacts nearly 300,000 workers at over 4,000 companies in over 150 industries and 77 countries. Together, we're transforming the global economy to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. Together, we'll realise our vision of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative world. Join the movement.
I always play that at the end, because I think that if I play it at the beginning, you don't need to listen to me blithering on all about what B Corp is and the benefit of it, to be honest. So thanks for listening. Just want to finish up and say that the B Corp movement is all very much about global and planetary interdependence, as the video says. And this is so true in the world today and some of the challenges we face. But I would like to sort of challenge everybody to have a think about it. If nothing else, go onto the B Corp website, sign up for the BIA, have a look at it, and see if it is something you can use, or you can help advise clients or others to consider using. Sorry, you've probably seen that. So yeah, any questions? I'm happy to field them.
Graham, that was wonderful. Thank you very much. Oriana.
Thank you. That was so interesting. Thanks, Graham. And I'll be contacting you later. Anyway.
Okay. I think you did send me a message and I missed it. Sorry.
And I just wanted to ask a couple of things. One is, how often do you have to recertify? Is it annual?
It's every 3 years. So
Oh,
we
3
certified
years.
it in November 2021, and we're, as I say, due for recertification. So.
And the second part of that question is, have you found that the criteria for certification changes as we have more extreme climate issues, as mandatory reporting's coming in? Are there shifts in the criteria for certification, have you found?
Thank you for that question, because yes, that brings on to a very neat point. And it's often a thing where some criticism has been levelled at B Corps. I'm sure you've seen it in the press over the last couple of years and stuff around, oh, how on earth did they get certification? They don't look like they've got a very good environmental footprint, or they haven't been socially very, very aware, or doing things the way you'd expect them to do. And yes, there is a process that's ongoing. The feedback ends on the 26th of March on the current iteration of these new standards, and that will bring in some areas, not necessarily tougher standards, but sort of like some guardrails below which you cannot be to gain the certification. So just to touch upon a few, so one would be fair wages. So going forward, when these, you assume the standards stay as they are when they're adopted next year and going forward, then a company, if it doesn't already pay a living wage, will have to have at least in place the plan as to how they're going to get to over the next sort of 3 years, for example. And the same goes with climate change. If they've not already got the plan in place to get the certification, they have to produce the plan, and clearly, in line with science, as to how they're going to progress on that journey to reduce carbon and so forth. So yeah, there is this recognition. This process has taken longer than I thought. This was introduced late 2020, start of 2021. So it does take a number of years, but that's the very nature of B Corp, because it's so open, it's so much stakeholder focused, that it makes sure that the whole community and then the wider business world has a chance to give them feedback and help guide how this goes. So yeah, the standards do change, they do evolve. It does take quite a process. So if you join it, I think they're doing it now, it will be under the current standards, and they've already said that if you gain certification, you will stay one complete certification round under that set of standards, and then the new standards will start to come in. So yeah, I hope that answers that.
Thank you. I've just got one quick other question. I'm not trying to monopolise, but from what you've said, so when you talk about fair living wages, does that apply, for instance, to a manufacturer or a company that has a supply chain Does that have to go across all the people that they work with?
So at the moment, it applies to your direct, and B Corp are quite clear in the use of language, and this is sometimes where confusion sort of sets in, because when people talk of workers, they interchange that with employees, but B Corp says, no, hold on, it's not just purely your direct employees. If you have someone on contract, long-term, more than 20 hours, more than 6 months in a row, then we think of them as workers, so you need to be treating them the same as you treat your employees. In terms of that wider supply chain, at this stage, no, it will ask questions and say, do you check and, can you prove that your supply chain all give, a living wage in the respective country, bearing in mind that we're now, in a global economy where a lot of supply comes from further afield. And there are certainly some B Corps. One springs to mind that I actually have one of their phones. They're called Fairphone. They're based in Holland, and they are able to certify that all of their workers in the Far East do get the living wage respective for their country and so forth. So it's not mandatory, but obviously it sets you out as doing things that bit different to your peers. Maybe, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Oriana. I've got a question. I just want to put it out to the room. See if anyone else has got a question for you, Graham. Guys, you got anything for Graham?
Sorry?
Dan?
So yeah, I would be interested in potentially signing up. Obviously, it's just me, and I'm just a consultancy, obviously. Is there kind of the time frame? Obviously, certifying a company that has 5,000 employees, for example, would be very different to certifying a small company. So how long is the kind of rough time frame, would you say? And is it, obviously, would it be applicable to myself as well in that?
Okay, so actually it's only myself and my wife in our business that and we went through the certification process. In some regards, if your intent is also to grow, when you're small is a nice time to do it, because you can embed the policies and you can embed these principles from the very get-go. And it's often a thing that probably smaller startups or scaling up companies overlook and go, oh, I'll do that maybe when I have 20 or 30 or 50 employees, could be worthwhile. But actually, there's an awful value in doing it early on and then having it embedded. In terms of timescales, that can be a tricky one to answer. Obviously, the smaller you are, the easier it is. And if it's just you, yourself, and I, in terms of deciding and bringing in policies and measuring things, that's a lot easier. And obviously, you've got a big disparate, company that's based on multiple sites, multiple countries. And that's also where it gets a bit more complicated when it comes to scoping in terms of how you go about the certification. Time, as I say, for a small company, it can be a matter of a number of hours, go through the BIA, realize the sort of things you need to be doing differently that you haven't thought about doing, and then put in a bit of process. In terms of smaller companies, what I have done in the past, I've run cohort support groups. So it's maybe like 5 or 6 companies come together once a week. We spend an hour each week going through the 5 pillars of the BIA, and then 5 weeks after that, where they come back with questions. So in total, about 10 weeks, we spread out over 12 to give a few breaks in there. And it's a great way for companies, smaller companies, to cost effectively get the support on their kind of B Corp journey. So if you or anyone you know, if that's of interest, then more than happy to have a chat about that.
Cool, that's really useful. Yeah, like I said, so I do want to expand at some point. So now is probably the time to get on it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Nice.
Very good question. Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really interesting. And we've been thinking about B Corp certification for some time, actually. So we run what we would consider to be principally a social impact business. Like that's the extremely purpose driven. And we're in tech. So two kind of questions. You mentioned about the industries that are sort of flagged, where you dive more deeply into those, and I wondered whether that extended to sort of countries or involvement with regimes, or part of the work that we are sort of aiming to do is with some of the LDCs, and I just wondered whether there were any of those that were kind of flagged. And then the sort of second point to that same question, really. Mark and I and my CEO, we attended a conference and spoke a few weeks ago around emerging tech in healthcare. And one of the questions that came up in the room was about the environmental impact of data processing. And there's a part where we want to be sort of at the forefront and are considering all of the different technologies that are available to that data processing piece. I just wondered whether that was on the horizon or already within the B Corp sort of thinking about the impact of tech like blockchain and others that we know have a huge environmental cost.
So go back to that first point. Sorry, did you say LDCs? Did you?
Yeah.
Sorry,
So the less developed countries.
Right. Okay.
What we would have said third world in old money.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of you're sort of more the sort of disclosure questionnaire piece about what they ask you in terms of your involvement and so forth. Yeah. It can get quite tricky and it can get quite complicated. And again, this is an evolving space because again, some's been leveled at B Corp to go, well, hold on, that company operates in this country or whatever. It is very much a case by case basis. So, and it's really to do with scale of involvement as well. So if you're like a service company and you've just got like a very small part to play and it's a very, very minuscule piece of all that you do, and this is a thing that you realize you probably want to move away from, then that's very different than someone that says, look, 90% of our work is involved with, say military hardware or something, or we are the key supplier in a fossil fuel process or something. That's very different. Do you know what I mean? And in terms of healthcare and stuff, I have certainly helped a couple of companies in that kind of sector, and they do drill a little bit into like ethics and any litigation that's gone on there and stuff. But these were companies that were providing kind of healthcare professionals into the likes of NHS and so forth. So it's very much a case by case basis. I probably need to learn a little bit more to understand a bit more as to why. But yeah, and then the whole tech footprint. Yeah, I mean it's a massive thing we're kind of grappling with. Often it'll be said that tech is the potential solver of some of our problems, but yeah, it equally comes with a large footprint. And I know there's a lot of work going on there. In a previous life, more construction type role, I'd worked with a transatlantic fiber optic company that was bringing fiber optic cables. And interestingly, the landing station for that cable on the American side, if it was Nova Scotia and Canada, it was exactly for that reason, because it was that far north. It was so much cooler to keep a data center. There wasn't the same energy requirements for air conditioning and so forth. So yeah, I mean there is, I think, a conscious movement and a thinking with all of this. And yeah, you're right. Blockchain and AI will certainly has a massive, footprint there.
Impact. Yeah, and sorry if I can just follow up with it. And is your sense of it? So where we're involved in projects that might the governance piece for us is huge, but where we're sort of involved in projects that have that kind of that balancing act of like what's the cost and what's the impact, do you feel that the B Corp certification is that robust kind of outward facing thing to say someone has kind of dove quite deeply into this, into all of the pieces? Or is it a more generic kind of
probably at this stage in terms of like, if you're asking me, will they kind of pull us over the coals in terms of our scope 1, 2, and 3, and that we've proved that we've reduced it? So at this stage, not particularly. Okay. You can, in theory, get even certification without having really touched too much on the scope 1, 2, and 3 impacts. But that will, as I say, change certainly going forward. But it's often an area that will prompt someone to go, actually, we were quite shocked. We didn't realize this is some of the impacts, and what can we do? And maybe we can change to a green server, our data set could be a green, or it could be, we get proof from them that they're powered by renewable energies and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I think that the one key thing with the B Corp and the framework that goes behind it is it prompts people to look and think and then do things differently. I think that's the key thing. We're all on a journey. We all have to do things in different areas, whether it's on the social side or the environmental side, to hopefully, as it says, moving forward in the right direction. So, but yeah, hopefully that answers that.
That does. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura. Tom.
Graham, I'd like to evidence one thing that you said, which is that I was in my local Waitrose about 2 weeks ago, and I saw an end of the aisle where all the products were B Corp, and it was branded up B Corp. So that is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
I want to challenge you.
Okay.
Because I love B Corp and I've followed the movement for a long time. I actually looked into being a B leader myself a few years ago. I didn't do it in the end. But my problem is, here we are in 2024, and the movement's been around for a while. And I want to hear it's moving the dial. And what I'm hearing is still, I'm going to be really tough on you. What I'm hearing is still a lot of top-down preachiness that sounds like it's a luxury if you're doing real well.
Mhm.
What I want to know is, how is B Corp going to lift people like us up? What's it do? What's it going to do for me?
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think there is a real challenge there with B Corp, and I really have great hope that this new standards will adjust and will address that. I mean, I suppose to put it in context, pre-2020 in the UK, there was like 500 B Corps. It's now hitting 2,000 in the space of a matter of years. And when you go through that rapid growth, you do end up with, unfortunately, maybe some people that maybe shouldn't be in there or maybe aren't doing things right. And that's why I said at the beginning, should be doing things better or should be doing things differently. And I mean, and this is a real challenge that B Lab, as they've grown the team and they've started to reflect and look at. But the one thing I suppose that the likes of the Brewdog incident, who was a B Corp for a very short period, highlights, is there is an opportunity to go and say, hey, hold on a minute, B Lab, what are these doing as a B Corp? They shouldn't be B Corp. And there is that kind of redress and there is that opportunity. Yes, absolutely, there is a massive body of work to be done in terms of having the really impacts that you would like to see. But the same token, I still do believe that starting and using the framework and going through the process will, as the momentum builds and people all reflect on it and go, actually, yes, this is potentially something we can get behind and we can use as one of the tools, it's not the answer. And even by their own, they would say that ultimately they don't want to exist. They shouldn't need to exist. This should be, some of these things should be what business should be doing. And some of this you'll now start to see government are even going, yeah, we want people to be more accountable and report on their performance and so forth and so on. So yeah.
And that'll all get there. So my question is, because I had this thought while you were talking, you mentioned the B locals. And I thought to myself, now that feels like the way to do this. What about ground up? What about these, the B local companies getting together and rather than this being this big top-down preachy thing about growing up? So I went on the B Corp UK site while you were talking and I searched for the B locals, and there isn't even a page. Well, there's a page that just says, oh, there's some, which dumps you off into a LinkedIn group. So I went to my Hampshire one. I went, oh, I'm in Hampshire. Let's go find my B local here in Hampshire. And it's just a LinkedIn group that's a bit of a mess.
Okay.
So if you want people like me to get on board, do something for us.
Yeah.
Get us involved. That's how you're going to persuade. I'm an expert in persuasion. That's how you're going to persuade people like me to come on board, is by saying, well, come in and be part of it. But it's, you know what I mean? It's got to be a bit less on the big preachy videos, bit more on building some web pages that might actually get some community going. That's my challenge to you.
Trust me, you're preaching about their website is not fantastic. And I think also that's the reality of, we probably need more people like you on the persuasion and the human psychology, because thus far we haven't communicated a lot of this stuff very well, and it's where the failing a lot of it has been, to be honest.
Maybe I should have become a B leader 4 years ago.
You should have done. There's a guy called Andy Hawkins. If you don't know of him, or he's worth connecting with, he's often referred to as Mr. B Corp. He's based down in the Bristol area, and he's like a fantastic ambassador, and he's always on, and he's always, and he what he's created down there is amazing. That's obviously nearly a blueprint of how things probably could be done. So,
well, thank you for accepting the challenge. I am a tough sod at the best of times, so, but it's said with love.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, Tom.
Before I come to Oriana and Laura, I want to ask this question. Is there any metrics or evidence available for SMEs when tendering for private or public sector contracts, if B Corp's a big advantage? Because that's what's going to...
Yeah, I suppose the simple answer to that is, I couldn't say to you, absolutely, definitely, if you're B Corp, NHS tenders, you're there. But what the process does do, if you go through it, is it's giving you all that data that when you get given the questionnaire on the ESG or the sustainability that we need you to complete, it's already there. Of course, we'd love the stage where it will be recognised as being the same as like an ISO or whatever, and that ticks the box to say on our prerequisites, oh, B Corp, good, right, perfect. No, we're not probably there, but there will be some organisations out there, I'm certain, that would have recognised or as B Corp as one, and B Corps themselves, to be honest, they know it, they've got it already. So yeah.
That would also persuade a lot of SMEs to
it certainly would
adopt it,
definitely
straight away. Oriana.
Yes, actually, now I'm responding to what you've just said, but just going back for a second, I just wanted to, you picked up on something, Graham, which was actually being able to communicate your message, your sustainability message is fundamental. And I was really interested, Tom, at your viewpoint about the website. I mean, isn't actually so little point doing incredibly impactful work if you can't communicate what you're doing and maximize the reach to a bigger audience. I mean, it's not a private thing, it's a B Corp, and the messaging is crucial. So part of the work that we do, the Impact Advisors, we do the full 360. We help you not only get a sustainability advisor in place on a fractional basis, but we also help you with everything else you may need to do, whether it's green finance or messaging or whatever, because they're all as important as the work you're doing. So that was just going back to that. And then in terms of SMEs, there are 5.5 million SMEs in the UK. 1 in 10 have a sustainability advisor. That's shocking. And in a way, that's why I want to talk to you, Graham. In a way, you know, the B Corp and, you know, the sustainability piece have to be working hand in hand, and they feel like they're not right now. And in terms of what you were saying, Laura, about the digital footprint and the energy consumption of digital, you know, there have been for a while platforms like Tezos, you probably know about them, who are a green NFT platform. You know, people are aware of the issues, and it's, you know, it's mainly people like you in the sector that are aware of the issues. Most people think digital is a really effective way to not use materiality, not use energy. It's actually not. So, you know, I'd be interested to talk to you too. Anyway.
Oriana, you make a really important point, which
you.
is actually that B Corp is in danger of not making itself a home for the most innovative businesses, because what it will always require is the technology to be sustainable enough. And often, but that's the thing is, when we create new technology, we don't often at the moment bake its sustainability in as the first thing. So, and a lot of Web3 technologies are very energy intensive. That's their problem. But it's going to be completely self-defeating if all the most innovative people can never be virtuous enough to be part of a B Corp.
Agreed. Yes.
It will only ever be kind of Luddites and second comers who will ever be part of it, and that feels like fundamentally self-defeating to me.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, and it is the part that I was going to say. I think actually between the three of you, you've sort of touched on it. I think we all come onto this call, and we're either trying to do the right things in our business or not. And what we're looking for are the ways that prove it and help make our businesses sustainable, because otherwise there's no point to any of this stuff. So it is looking for that. So I think, you know, I will admit my own lens of looking through is how is the certification going to help me build a better, stronger business? It's probably not going to shape tremendously what we're trying to do, you know, from a global perspective, because what we're trying to do, we believe, is the right thing, and we're actively looking for that. So it is about the messaging and the support that comes through, and whether we do get that procurement traction or the increased customer awareness that ultimately is going to be the decider as to whether it's worth sort of pursuing. And I think your point, Tom, about that local fabric is really key, because that's the bit that filters through for customer choice, is what people sort of see operating locally in their own communities.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of points just to pick up on there, that it's the community, the B Corp community. It's hard to put into words, but when you actually do go and engage a little bit, it is incredible. And the amount of networking contacts, and the fact that, like, particularly in London, you could be in a room and you're in a room with massive B Corps, and you might be just a small startup and you're getting opportunities to tender for. One example was a small recruitment consultant based in Dublin, and they become B Corp certified and reached out to Coots Bank in London, sorry. And then suddenly, oh yeah, we'll have a conversation with you about, we'd love to work with a B Corp recruitment consultant to help us fill our positions. I mean, there's no way someone in recruitment was going to answer the phone to this small 2-3-man team, in financial recruitment, only for the fact that they were both B Corps, as example. And Tom's point about in his local Waitrose about the items, I'm not sure if he looked at where those brands, but very often they're quite small companies that would actually die for the opportunity, even just to get a listing in Waitrose, never mind to be promoted on the end of an aisle. And that's a great asset if you're in that kind of food and drink kind of space. So it's all a bit horses for course as to how and where the benefits come out of the back of B Corp. But going back to the one about attraction of talent and retaining talent, is such a massive thing. And the generational attitude to this is so different, and they are really focused and really drilling in on this. And as more of them filter up through the management levels in organizations, then that's when you'll start to see they will set the agenda and they will be pushing a lot more for this. And I think what sets B Corp out is that external verification piece. It's not just someone saying, oh, I think I'm doing good, I think I'm doing the right thing. It's actually that validation, someone coming and going, yes, you are, or actually, no, that's not as good as you think it is, or you've misunderstood that, or, I think that's where there's a big education piece involved in it as well, going through the process. So.
Graham, can I make one suggestion?
Yeah.
At the beginning of that, you said it's hard to put into words.
Mm-hmm.
When you think that, you should be picking up the phone to me. I find very things into words.
I should, Tom. We're chatting next week, definitely.
Before switching to Dan, I've got to come off the call now. Got a call in a minute. I just want to say a big thank you, Graham. It's been fantastic. You're going to get all the love and support and best wishes on LinkedIn today from us. And Lee, you're going to host us until you're through this morning. So I just want to say, well done. Very important. Keep the message, even improving the message through Tom or
Tom. Absolutely, yeah.
And if anyone wants to get in contact with you, Graham, they can, can't they?
I'll just jump onto the. So on either LinkedIn or that's my email address. Or search us up.
Or I can do intros if you want.
Perfect.